Over the past few years, Boeing has slowly but surely been losing its dominance in the aircraft market to Airbus. With the current woes of some of its latest aircraft, it looks like a bit of innovation would be needed for Boeing to reclaim top spot. That innovation could come in the form of a new Boeing 797 aircraft, which is being touted to change the future of aviation. And when Boeing successfully gets this aircraft into the skies, it could end up being what saves its future. Here's why. You see, in the late 2010s, rumors began to emerge of Boeing's plans to release a new airliner which could in theory dominate the middle-of-the-market sector. Boeing had determined by the mid-2010s that the market was large enough to launch a clean-sheet design. A number of top airlines had also expressed interest in a composite 7-abreast twin-aisle jet, which could also favor single-aisle economics. So it looked like the stars had aligned, and it came down to a battle of whether to create a larger 737 MAX variant or an all-new aircraft design in what would become known as the middle-of-the-market sector. In the end, the MAX 10, the larger variant of the 737 MAX, won. But Boeing didn't stop the development plans for the new aircraft design, as it saw the demand potential for a new aircraft with similar specifications. It was just going to have to be introduced at a later time, perhaps mid-2020s, as Boeing initially planned. That airliner was called the New Mid-Size Airplane, or NMA, and dubbed as what would be the Boeing 797. And Boeing identified the market as a sweet spot, expecting demand for over 4,000 of them. The aircraft was planned to act as a buffer between narrow bodies and wide-body aircraft, in that it could fly over ranges commonly associated with wide bodies, while still offering most perks of a narrow-body aircraft, such as flying to remote locations. The Boeing 797 was expected to generate up to 30% more revenue compared to other narrow bodies and have 40% lower trip costs than the wide bodies it would have replaced. And maybe most importantly, the 797 would have more or less been the long-awaited successor to the popular 757, which Boeing had stopped producing since 2004. In the end, Boeing decided to push the 797 plans to the side in 2020 to focus on getting the uncertified 737 MAX aircraft in the air, not to mention sorting out the issues on the ones which had received certification. The project was briefly revived in 2021 with plans to develop a shorter variant, which could enter service by the late 2020s at a developmental cost of up to $25 billion. However, development on the project was once again halted in June 2022, citing the need for new engine technology and development resources. But despite putting all their eggs into the 737 MAX basket, the aircraft family has faced even more backlash as its problems have continued into another year. And now bringing out the 797 worksheets could be Boeing's get-out-of-jail card, at least for success in the middle-of-the-market sector. To understand how the new Boeing 797 could be the solution to Boeing's problems, let's take a look at some of the notable specs it would reportedly be coming with. According to reports, the new 797 would come in two variants, the 797-6 and the 797-7. The 6 would be a 225-seater capable of flying over a 5,000 nautical mile range, and the 7 would be a 275-seater capable of flying over a slightly lower range of 4,500 nautical miles. The aircraft is reportedly expected to be powered by a new 220 kilonewton turbofan engine with an over 10-to-1 bypass ratio and 50-to-1 overall pressure ratio from one of the top commercial aircraft engine manufacturers. If you're wondering which ones specifically, GE Aviation, CFM International and Pratt & Whitney have all been mentioned, but there's a chance that Rolls-Royce will be making a proposal with the UltraFan if the aircraft is to be developed. The Boeing 797 airframe would also most likely come with a similar composite design to the 787, as a carbon fiber fuselage offers less weight as well as a lower cabin pressure and humidity, which could improve both in-flight experience and performance. But how does the 797 stack up against similar aircraft from Boeing's main competition, Airbus? The Boeing 797 would be competing against Airbus aircraft such as the A321neo and its extra long-range variant, the XLR. It could also possibly compete against the A350, but most realistically, it would be going up against the A321XLR. In terms of passenger limit, The 797 would be able to offer slightly more seats than the A321XLR's 250. But this is only possible on the larger 7 variant, which could house up to 275 seats. Although, in a 2-class seating configuration, the smaller variant would have more seats, 225 to the A321XLR's 210. For cruising speed, Airbus has opted to go for a lower speed in order to increase fuel efficiency. It reported Mach 0.78 speed is lower than the Mach 0.85 of the 797. Range is arguably the most important battle in this head-to-head, and the A321XLR finds itself in the middle of both 797 variants with its range of about 4,700 nautical miles. When it comes to fuel efficiency, the A321XLR is a super fuel-efficient aircraft. Boeing still has the opportunity to select a propulsion system more fuel-efficient than the A321XLR's CFM LEAP 1A or Pratt & Whitney PW1100GJM engines. Whether this is done, however, is left to be seen. So now that we've seen how the Boeing 797 holds up against what could be its competition, we need to answer the main question: can it save Boeing? Well, when you look at the plans for the development of the new Boeing 797, you begin to realize that it could be an aircraft capable of taking full advantage of the ever-improving digitalization as well as the emerging engine technologies. Not to mention new types of fuels such as sustainable aviation fuel and maybe even hydrogen fuel. The Boeing 797 would most likely act as the 757 and 767 replacement everyone has been waiting for, that could fill the gap between the largest 737 MAX variant and the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Some airlines, such as Delta Airlines, have been looking for a replacement for their 757 aircraft, but have been basically forced to keep them in operation since there isn't any Boeing aircraft which offers similar capabilities. Also, there have been serious issues with the 737 MAX, which you are probably aware of if you aren't new to this channel, as well as the 787. In fact, there's recently been yet another incident on a 787 plane which left 50 people injured while on a LATAM Airlines flight to New Zealand after the aircraft temporarily lost control mid-flight following an instrument failure. But the baseline is that Boeing will hopefully have learned from its mistakes when manufacturing the new 797. A new Boeing 797 would allow Boeing to reinvent the twin-aisle market with more modern fuselage compositions, systems and engines, rather than just placing faith in aircraft built many decades ago. And the market demand for twin-aisle aircraft is certainly there and is expected to be for the next couple of decades at least, especially around the Asian continent. Also, low-cost long-haul travel could be a huge market in future and is already being explored by low-cost airlines such as Ryanair and Southwest Airlines. So Boeing 797 could well be the solution, especially if its unit price is reasonable. Additionally, the new engine technologies, which Boeing cited as a reason for halting the development of the 797, have finally begun to arrive. Engines like the CFM open rotor concept, General Electric's GE9X and the Rolls-Royce Ultrafan are either available or close to being available for aircraft use, and the 797 can now capitalize on these upgrades. And finally, the Boeing 797 could be a perfect cargo aircraft due to its improved efficiency and lighter airframe when compared to wide-body freighters. But it is unlikely that Boeing would be pursuing this idea. So in all essence, the introduction of a new Boeing 797 aircraft looks to be what Boeing needs at this point. But there are a host of problems which threaten to derail its chances of making it into the skies. One of the main threats for the introduction of the new Boeing 797 is Boeing themselves. Boeing is apparently in no hurry to bring in a completely new aircraft into the market and has its resources focused instead on sorting the issues with the 737 MAX, as well as the 777X programs. The situation with the 737 MAX also poses another problem for the 797. The consistent incidents with the MAX has brought Boeing's production priorities to the fore. The sheer nonchalance at which some of those aircraft were pieced together has left a lot of observers shocked about Boeing's disregard for safety. And while Boeing is reportedly working hard to fix these issues, it would be difficult not to get more suspicious if it were to begin focusing resources on developing an all-new aircraft rather than completely addressing the safety and quality concerns of the 737 MAX and indeed the 787 to restore public trust. So until Boeing's current issues are resolved, it is unlikely that it would turn back to the development of the 797, but it may have to act quickly so as not to miss out on the potentials of a 797 aircraft and cede dominance to Airbus once again in the middle of the market sector. Ultimately, the Boeing 797 certainly has a lot of promise and should see sweeping demand if Boeing goes ahead with its plans. There are many niches which the aircraft could fill, which makes it look like one of the more exciting prospects for the future of aviation. The 797 could even be a wild-card 737 replacement. The 737 was a historic aircraft back in the 60s and 70s, but in all honesty, an over 60-year-old airframe has no business remaining in the skies. And we can see that with all the problems Boeing has had to face with its 737 MAX program. Problems which we can't even guarantee will be over with the FAA's increased oversight on production. The 797 would be far more versatile and would be able to operate at peak performance for decades into the future, without any worries of part of its airframe falling out mid-flight, hopefully at least. The Boeing 797 will come eventually. Boeing doesn't have much of a choice at this point, but since Boeing is currently occupied with certification and other issues for its 737 MAX and 777X programs, it could take anywhere between 3 to 7 years before we get anything official about the aircraft. However, Boeing's CEO has revealed that its next plane would be developed using digital tools which would shorten the program's development time and also reduce costs. So it could possibly take a relatively short time for the 797 to be developed. But whenever it does come, it could be Boeing's saving grace in what has been a tumultuous decade so far. So, what do you think about the new Boeing 797? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care.